You know you're not an INFP when you are a materialist. Now, I don't mean materialistic, I'm talking about the philosophy of materialism. Materialism is a philosophy that holds that matter is the fundamental substance in nature, and that all things, including mental states and consciousness, are results of material interactions. Basically, it's kind of implying that the material physical world is all there is. INFPs tend to reject this worldview. That's not to say that they reject the physical world's existence or importance. It's that they feel like there's something more, or maybe so much more, whether that be believing in higher forms of consciousness or other planes of existence, or something more simple like believing people's imaginations are suppressed and limited in day-to-day life. Think of a beautiful piece of music, let's say piano music. So you have the instrument, which is a physical object, the hammers hitting the strings, the wood, the metal, and if you operate that object, it'll make a sound. If you operate it in a good way, it'll make a nice sound. But when everything comes together in a perfectly calibrated way, it's more than just a nice sound, or at least it feels like more. It's something moving or transcendent. It has a transporting quality to it. These mechanical and material things seem to create, or maybe even do create, something beyond the physical. When I listen to a piece of music like that, my brain kind of moves downwards, stripping away the magic to reveal any concepts underlying it. The chords, the scales, the rhythm, the timing, the finger positions on the piano. I take an analytical approach that breaks things down. INFPs do something kind of similar, but they go upwards. They analyze that feeling, that state of being that the music has created, the emotions it inspires. Of course, INFPs are perfectly capable of having a scientific, rational, and realistic analysis of the world as it is. But having extroverted sensing as their polar or worst function means they can kind of float off into different worlds, like an Alice in Wonderland type character. I found it curious that both of these quotes I'm about to read were right next to each other on the website. The first one is very INFP. The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt with the heart. And my relationship with emotions is probably best represented by the second quote. I don't want to be at the mercy of my emotions. I want to use them, to enjoy them, and to dominate them. And finally, a third quote that shows that both thinking types and feeling types don't quite have it right. Your emotions are the slaves to your thoughts, and you are the slave to your emotions. You know you're not an INFP if you're a man or woman with a plan. I've described INFPs before as wanderers, and any type that has extroverted intuition in their top two functions is going to have a kind of restlessness to them. In INFPs, this can manifest in many different ways, such as trying new looks and appearances, or even different philosophies and ways of approaching life. Any is fundamentally explorative. It never likes coming to a settled conclusion. If you add this to them having extroverted thinking as their lowest inferior function, this means they're going to struggle to be ultra organized or disciplined in that structured way. To the outside world, it may look like INFPs are just floating aimlessly through life. But in reality, in the same way that an INTP builds up this logical framework over time with their TI, INFPs are building up an emotional, value-based framework that they can use to orientate themselves in the world and make decisions with. Since you never know where an insight is going to come from, it's very difficult to plan on finding them. There is a quote I heard somewhere that an adventure is never planned. You know you're not an INFP when you have an ideal career or job. The conventional workplace is a very TE construct. Standardized processes and bureaucracy. Basically, very ill-suited to the INFP temperament. Having to suppress individuality to fit into the machine. Even more creative jobs like working in a startup can be problematic by virtue of their tendency to be plagued by political maneuvering and ultra-competitive, aggressive mindsets. It's possible that being self-employed or working freelance would suit INFPs best. Of course, INFPs often have a litany of hobbies where they can produce things and express themselves. But having the freedom and flexibility that self-employment gives could be a very good move. Of course, it's not the case that every INFP hates their job, but kind of. Okay, interesting. If you're an INFP, leave us a comment and tell us about your job. I'm curious about job satisfaction for INFPs. If possible, try and keep it brief because we do like to try and read all the comments. You constantly push out of your comfort zone. INFPs, like INTPs, can have kind of a double whammy of not being extremely energetic always because they have polar SE, but also being very comfort seeking because of their third slot SI. Getting stuck in a rut is a risk for anyone, but INFPs can be especially prone to it. You know you're not an INFP if you haven't subscribed. Couldn't resist.